We're so excited to have Paul here to present as the expert for this month. But before we get things over to him, we just wanted to do a few housekeeping items. So my name is Caitlin Thibodeau. I'm the Marketing and Engagement Coordinator at CEED. If you don't know, we're a nonprofit organization that has programs and supports for small business owners and entrepreneurs across Nova Scotia and at any stage of business. If you want to learn more about CEED or get in touch with us, we'll be sharing how to do that at the end. And as you might have heard there, the session will be recorded, so we'll share it out to you after, along with the slide deck from Paul as well. And we want to acknowledge that this is taking place in Mi'kmahi, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. So I want to extend a huge thank you to Paul Gerin for being our expert this month on selling to the federal government. Paul has over 20 years of federal government experience, and he has been with Procurement Assistance Canada, PAC, since September 2021. This is part of the Public Services and Procurement Canada, and his role is to assist businesses in navigating and understanding the bid process on federal contracting opportunities. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise, Paul, and I'll hand it over to you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you. So a lot of times people don't see themselves selling to government. So as we go through the presentation, it's a shorter presentation because it is really ask the expert. So I'm looking for a bit of your engagement to ask questions just in case there's something more general. If it's something very specific, then you'll have my contact information that you'll be able then to reach out if it's something very specific to your business that you don't want to maybe share with the broader audience. So the presentation itself is really doing business with the Government of Canada. And when we think of selling to the Government of Canada, a lot of people sometimes don't see themselves selling, or they find that the process may be a little bit long and onerous. So they may have maybe tried a process in the past, but they're now looking at it as a second opportunity. So feel free to ask questions either in the chat or I guess raising your hand and asking during the presentation as well. So it's really to ask the questions. That way we're able to answer hopefully any questions that you have. So this is really to help you identify and look for opportunities through the federal government. So who am I and what do I do? So I work for Procurement Assistance Canada. PAC is our acronym, and my role is to help businesses see themselves selling to government, helping them identify those opportunities, and helping them identify what government departments and agencies would be not really their most ideal client, but what departments and agencies actually purchase their product, because not every product or service is actually bought. So this is for businesses that have services, but also physical products that are off the shelf or would be to your other clients. So if you're already selling to the end consumer in terms of the general public, or if you're selling business to business. So a lot of services and resources that you already have for your business is something that the government probably buys. So what do I do? So Procurement Assistance Canada was created as part of the overall larger department of PSPC, and we're here to support. We identify smaller and diverse businesses, but in reality, at the end of the day, if a company with 500 employees is unaware of the newer steps or even some part of the processes, then we're not going to turn them away. So we look at businesses regardless of what size they are to help them navigate the federal procurement process. So we do that by one of four main directives. We do that by assisting. So a seminar like this is to assist if it was more of a one-to-one, but we also do it by just informing. So we do a lot of presentations, we'll do a lot of trade shows, we'll walk sometimes just an event because sometimes the event itself may not lead to us doing a presentation or having an exhibit space, but we're wanting to see those businesses in their where they're at, because a lot of times it's hard to find a specific type of business without actually going to their trade shows or to their conferences, because that's where they're at in terms of their business. So we do that by assisting and informing and by engaging. So even though we're doing a presentation today, if anybody after wanted to do a more personal call, we then do one-to-ones. If you're here in Halifax, I always like to meet people in person. It's a little bit more receptive. But if you're across the province or across Canada, then we do that also through either Zoom or MS Teams or a quick phone call if it's sometimes just a quick request for information that can be identified over the phone or by email. So a lot of times if I'm at a trade show, then depending on the breaks or the agenda, then it does allow us to continue to provide support. There are 6 regional offices, and we'll show a visual map of where we are across Canada. But we also listen to you as a supplier. So if there are issues that are part of the supplier base, so if you're actually having difficulty with an application or with the process and you're unsure, then we actually track that information. And then we actually have a reduced barrier committee that actually then looks at those issues and brings them forward to policy and to senior management. That way they can look at the process to reduce that barrier. So whether it's a physical barrier or an application barrier as part of the process. Feel free at any point as well if you have questions. And yes, my contact information will be shared at the end of the presentation, both on the screen, but also by CEED at the end of the presentation. So when we think of the federal government, we sometimes forget that it's one government, but it's about 144 departments and agencies. So we are one client, but in reality, we're 144 plus, because at that point, you are sometimes very specific to who you're targeting. So if it's a product or service that's very specific to D&D, then D&D may be your only client, even though it's the government of Canada. If it's a more broader product or service that you offer, then it could be something that we buy across various departments and agencies. And the way we buy it may dictate how, the type of onboarding that you have, but also who your ideal clients are. So as an example, we buy roughly $24 billion in goods and services. Many of those are lower dollar value, so we don't do large purchases of boats or planes on a daily basis, but there's continuous purchasing that's done on a daily basis. So over 500,000 contracts are awarded on a yearly basis, and a lot of them take place just with credit card transaction. So for small businesses, sometimes they know that it is an issue to have credit card machines, but for a lot of our purchases, it is by credit card. If you are selling to the federal government, at some point then you are being registered as a supplier. So there are pre-requirements just to be for us to sell directly to you, but at the same time, there's a lot of contracts that require different steps. So we try and get to suppliers earlier in their business. That way they do register prior to maybe a larger purchase that's being put on a national website for tender. One of the things we encourage, so feel free to reach out and at any point, but when you are at an event or if you are engaging with various suppliers to build your network, so to keep that directory of individuals that you speak with, that way you are able then to have that engagement with them in terms of who actually buys. So a lot of times you're speaking with a contracting officer, working on either on behalf of their department directly, or on behalf of what they would consider a client. So our department, depending on the value and the nature of the purchase, may be buying on behalf of D&D or the Coast Guard or corrections. So sometimes we're buying on their behalf or they're buying directly on their own behalf. So depending on the nature of the purchase, you may be buying we may be buying it from you directly, or you may be part of the supply chain. So if you're providing the services to another company, then indirectly you may be selling to the government without really knowing who the end client is. So as an example, if you provide resources and tools for the trades, then the trades themselves may be purchasing your equipment and supplies to then do work within a federal institution, say, for example, either electrician or plumber or IT for security. So you can always sometimes see where your product might end up, or it could be that we purchase your item so often that we have what we call supply arrangements. So we encourage you to network to build that resource, even if it's your neighbor. So if you've got neighbors or either family or friends that work in government, ask them who does their purchasing, because it may be something that you're able to then promote your services or your goods to that department or agency as well. So when we contract with the federal government, so our main department is Public Services and Procurement Canada. So we buy most of the goods and services for all of the federal departments and agencies. But when we think of 144 departments and agencies, that would be a lot of direct purchasing that we would have to do. So purchases below 25,000 for goods and 40,000 for services, they can reach out directly to vendors. So if it is something for, say, $5,000, so they're doing a small event and they're looking for a photographer, they'll reach out to see whether or not there's a supply arrangement national with our department. And if there isn't, then they'll reach out to at least 3 suppliers, ask them for a quote, and then go from there and acquire the services of a photographer. If it's over 25,000 and over 40,000, and we'll talk about this in the next few slides, is then we do actually then have a formal process where the tender will go out and then it'll get reviewed, and then the department will then acquire the services of the company that was successful in their bid. So one of the things that we always try and speak to suppliers is make sure that you're visible. So if you have a website, make sure that it's up to date. If you have no website, and you're relying on social media platforms like either Facebook or LinkedIn or Instagram, make sure that your contact information is fairly visible, because if for whatever reason we don't have any supply arrangements or any suppliers listed in our business directory, we then will use those social media platforms or Google to maybe identify some of those suppliers or associations. So if you're active with an association, ensure that your contact information is up to date with that association as well. So be it the Chamber of Commerce or the Engineers Association, ensure that your contact information is always kept up to date, because we may look to those associations to also share our requests, but also where their lists are usually public, we may look for suppliers off of those lists as well. So when we think of the requirements through the federal government, we also then look at Treasury Board policy to ensure that the purchasing is done in a fiscal and financial process, because it is public money. So even though we're buying equipment or services for either federal employees, at the end of the day, most of those are being purchased to help deliver programs to the public. So it is public money. So it is your money when you're doing when you pay your taxes, that is providing services to other Canadians, be it here in Atlantic or across Canada or internationally if applicable. So when we talk about the competitive process, so for anything that's over 25,000 and 40,000, we do have very specific processes that we do purchases. So we do have a request for proposal, a request for a standing offer, and a request for a supply arrangement are the most common. A request for proposal is issued initially to solicit the goods or services. It'll include the specific information of the goods required. It describes the evaluation process and all of the criteria that will be used in terms of how we will select the winner of the bid. For complex inquiries or things that may require more information from the supplier, suppliers may be invited to to propose a solution to a problem or a requirement or an objective. So a request for proposals may be very specific for an actual department, or it may be looking for information. So it could be a request for information from those in industry. The two larger ones is the request for standing offer and the request for a supply arrangement. So a request for a standing offer is used to solicit goods or services where suppliers meet the evaluation criteria that were originally identified, and they become pre-qualified as a supplier and are holders of the standing offer. So that allows us to have a list of suppliers either regionally, by department, or nationally that are available for us to then purchase that item. What we try and encourage with suppliers as well is never anticipate that you're going to sell. It is only when we do a call up against that standing offer or that supply arrangement that you then actually have a contract that you've signed off with a department or an agency that you would then want to ensure that you've got that product or service available. The request for a supply arrangement is a little bit similar. So it's used to solicit arrangements with the suppliers for the establishment of that supply arrangement. It may be used more than once a year. It may be refreshed more often. So it may be identified either on a quarterly, it may have continuous onboarding. So that then allows for new suppliers in that industry to then also have a supply arrangement with us. So again, you're becoming pre-qualified, but it's not an actual contract until we actually do a call against those. And all of these are then also shared on very specific platforms. So we'll go through that here now. So Canada Buys .canada.ca is the Government of Canada's official site for public tenders. There are other sites out there that third-party platforms use. But CanadaBuys.canada.ca is where you would find all of our current as well as past award notices. So there it does provide you with information on historical purchases if you're looking to see what department or agency may have purchased your item last year, or who may have won an award that you saw maybe a few months ago and you're wanting to see who actually won the contract, because maybe you see yourself selling to them versus selling to the government directly. We also, within CanadaBuys.canada.ca, now also pull information that's from the federal, provincial, and municipal governments. So it is a place where you're able to find all three levels of government. A lot of the concepts that we've already mentioned are applicable for other levels of government. Their thresholds may be a little bit differently. So at that point, if you are looking to do more with the municipalities or the provinces, feel free to reach out and I can share contact information here in Atlantic. One of the aspects of registering with the federal government, or being on the Canada Buys website, it's a public website. So I use the example of it being a modified Google as a platform. So it is very specific to government tenders, but it then allows you to search very specifically, either using the various keywords or various codes to find opportunities for your small business. So here you're able to look at the website without having to register for anything. But if you do then decide to register then on the Canada Buys website, it then also provides you with redirects to how to register as a supplier and how to then identify the opportunities. So we still have a historical site called buyandsell.gc.ca, where there's information on registration tools in terms of just setting yourself up as a supplier, key procurement contacts, as well as our policies, guidelines, and procurement applications. So it is a site that's currently being slowly archived. And for the next few years, there'll be information both on Canada Buys, but also on Buy and Sell. And then nationally, we do have just the Canada.ca website. So this is a quick visual of the government electronic tendering service site, so Canada Buys. There, it does provide you with the ability to use keywords within a word search. It does allow you to filter by region. I usually recommend to people, though, if you are looking for regional opportunities for either provincial or municipal, then you may need to change the filtering just a bit. But anything at a federal level, you're able just to put in the product or service that you're looking for, and then you're then able to bring up the types of opportunities. So within the screen, you would see that there is a request for communication consultants for the Net Zero Advisory Board from Environment Canada. So that's an example of a solicitation request for services. It's easy to navigate. It does allow you to do filters, and then once you identify those opportunities, so within that keyword search, if I put in, say, net zero or communications, rather than having to go back to that website on a daily basis, I can set up a pre-notification by following the search. If I bookmark the search, then it's just going to bookmark the page. So we always recommend to people to follow the search. That way it allows you to receive any new notifications based on those keywords that you've identified within that opportunity. So how do you become a supplier? So now we're wanting you to really step back, have the discussion with yourself or with someone, a business advisor, but also with us to say, okay, am I at a stage at this point for my to sell to government? So we have that conversation. In order to become a supplier, you do need to have your business number with Canada Revenue Agency, and then you actually register in what we call our supplier registration database, and we provide you with what we call a procurement business number. It's the same number that CRA gives you. That way we're working with you in terms of your business versus you with your social insurance number. So that's why we have you register with Canada Revenue Agency. That way you do have a business number versus us working with you with your social insurance number. You're then wanting to register on a third-party platform that we're now using for most of our submissions called SAP Ariba. So SAP Ariba is something that we do recommend people to be pre-registered on. We do recommend going in through our website through the canadabuys.canada.ca because there is a Government of Canada questionnaire that then you populate as you go in. So if you were to Google SAP Ariba and then just go in indirectly through their platform, then it may not capture the Government of Canada questionnaire. By going in through the Canada Buys website, then the Government of Canada questionnaire then does get identified. Depending on your service or product, we then have various registrations on various other databases. So two of them, just to identify two, are Pro Services and Select. A little bit more about those. And Pro Services is for IT and non-IT professional services. So very specific in terms of the nature of the work that consultants would do. So it's a very robust list of consultants, regardless of the type of work that they're doing, and with the different categories in terms of the different industries. So if you're an engineer, you could be a mechanical engineer, you could be a civil engineer. Those would have two different arrangements under Pro Services. If it's something more specific to information technology, then we do have task-based as well as task and solutions-based. So we do separate those separately. So the task and solutions for professional services also include HR, business consulting, and change and project management. If you're looking at providing staffing, then staffing does have its own directory of companies within the temporary help services. If you're in the engineering or agriculture or construction industry, then Select is a database that we use. And then if you're providing interpretation in terms of duality of language, then we actually have a linguistics services directory with the Translation Bureau. So here we would look at any businesses that provide support within translation, interpretation, terminology, or word processing. A lot of our information is only in English and French. but because of the nature of the Canadian and international markets, we look for translators in almost every language that would be required. So if you do have certification from uh, uh, a linguistic school, or if you're originally from another country, there may be a bit of an evaluation to confirm that you're able to do those translations in that what would be considered your first language, and because English and French may be your second or third, if not fourth language. So we do that translation, interpretation, and terminology is not just English and French. So if you do speak more than two languages, then it may be something to consider as well. So again, we do quite a bit in terms of seminars, one-to-ones. We do have a national support help desk in terms of providing resources and tools, and they also help support the supplier registration. So if you've forgotten your password, then our 1-800-info line is able there to help. We do have a lot of information online, so it is available for the general public to find as well. The easiest way to find our information outside of Canada Buys is just canada.ca/procurement assistance Canada, so PAC. That'll provide you with a direct link to our events page, our webinar page, a lot of supporting materials for you as a supplier. So one of the things that our office also does is we also support D&D and what they call their ideas program, so innovation, defense, and excellence in security. So if you are also looking at your own business and you have items that are pre-commercialized, so they're not yet sold to the Canadian market or international market, we look, or D&D looks for solutions to various challenges. So one of the ones that's more known by the Ideas program is drones. So if you're in the remote industry with drone technologies, then Ideas may be something to keep an eye on, because they do various challenges looking for industry to provide maybe solutions for various aspects. And with D&D, you have to remember it is for all of their branches. So it is for the Air Force, the Navy, the Army, and other dependent initiatives within D&D. So what does Ideas actually do? So they will do challenges looking for potential solutions to defense and security challenges. Sometimes we may think, okay, that may not be relevant to my business, but it's human resources, it's environmental, it's health and safety, it's transit, it's technology. So it's not all about the ships. Sometimes it's about the technology behind the ship. Sometimes it's just the health and safety of the regular or civilian forces that are working within that environment, and they're wanting to ensure that for their health and safety. So it could be, how do we ensure that the members that are active on a warship, if they fall overboard, is there a way to ensure that we recognize that as soon as they're in the water, versus 4 or 5 leagues away and not realizing that they've gone over. So we look at various aspects to ensure the health and safety of the military. But it's also that idea of, if you do have something that's pre-commercialized, or you're not sure whether or not there's the ability, especially for academics. So we will look for businesses to partner with the academic institutes. So we do have two CEED members who are at university, and they're joining CEED within their co-op, to think of it as well. So if you're seeing things that are being pre-commercialized within your academic institute, it could be something that could be commercialized, having the government of Canada as that first client to help validate that technology, and then actually be then a client of the government of Canada. Over the last few years, they've had $85 million in annual funding to help businesses develop. So this is money to the companies that then actually then have the government of Canada as a client to help validate that before they actually commercialize it. The best way to see about the various competitions is just to sign up for their Ideas and to search Canada Buys for Ideas, and that'll then bring up the information. So Ideas does a variety of things. They do competitive projects where it is a phased procurement process. They do innovation networks. They also have contests, as it sounds, sandbox. So you get to play in the sandbox with your technology and see if it works. And then they also do test drives where it allows you to, have the government test drive your product through the final stages of commercialization as you go through that innovation process. So as earlier mentioned, we have 6 regional offices across Canada. So here in Atlantic, we cover Atlantic Canada, but at the end of the day, if somebody, well, actually earlier this week, I had a client from British Columbia, so we had a midday conversation, so it was early morning for them, because I engaged when they were here locally a few months ago. They had reached out, and then when they had a follow-up question, rather than wait for later in the day for our BC office, they then reached out just to continue the conversation because I was already familiar. And then we have Western Canada, Central, and then our friends in Quebec. Alors, si vous avez des questions en français, je suis aussi bilingue. So if you do have questions in French, I can also answer those as well. So this is the opportunity, though, to ask questions. So we do have a newsletter. So if you're interested just in general information about what we do, we put this out about every 2 months. So feel free to sign up for our newsletter. So when you do receive the email from CEED, the QR code or the hyperlink within the deck is available for you then to register. My contact information is also there. It's easier to email me than it is to call me, because if I'm at a presentation like today, or if I'm part of a panel or various groups, then sometimes I'm able to email versus speak over the phone, and then we can make